What's good? It's your boy Fanon. All right. We got a good fight coming up today. Oleksandr Usyk versus Murat Gassiev for the unified cruiserweight title. Unified meaning the IBF, the WBA, the WBC, and the WBO is going to be on the line today, and I'm looking forward to it. I'm going to go through some of the predictions that have been made for it. For me, I'm pretty comfortable with who I think is going to win, and that being Oleksandr Usyk. But there's been some other experts that have predicted, and people who know more about boxing than me, because they are fighters who are in the ring, and a couple fighters have predicted that I have a lot of respect for, predicted that Murat Gassiev would win the fight, and that being Paulie Malignaggi, who says he edges towards Gassiev, and he think it'll be a great fight, but he has Gassiev by late stoppage. And then also a fighter, Andrew Tabiti. Now, Andrew Tabiti, of course, is a cruiserweight himself, one of the best American cruiserweights, if not the best American cruiserweight. And he says that the first time he had Usyk the favorite, but now looking at the tournament, I'm starting to respect Gassiev's boxing. He says boxing skills. I thought that he had just a come forward. He was just a come forward fighter, just punching hard, trying to get you out of there. But when he fought Dorticos, he was actually boxing real smart. Dorticos was the aggressor in the first half of the fight, and he was boxing well in the later rounds. He knocked him out. I can see the fight going either way. It could be 50-50. I feel Gassiev had a tough time, even though he beat Lebedev. With Lebedev was boxing Gassiev's was boxing Gassiev pretty good. Southpaw, shorter. Usyk is a taller southpaw, Olympic gold medalist. I'm gonna give Gassiev a hard time, but he could knock him out too. That's what I love about boxing. You never know who's gonna win. It's a toss up, but if I had to put my money down, it'd be on the harder puncher, and that is Gassiev. Right now, many of the other people were making predictions for this. I'm going through the Ring magazine's prediction, but also Marco Hutt is another boxer. He has Gassiev Gassiev by KO or Usyk by unanimous decision. He says, I think this will be a very good fight, interesting fight for boxing. Both are very tough, competitive fighters. Both of them are strong and have good fundamentals. This fight will be beautiful to watch. Gassiev and I sparred in 2014. I know him well, and he's a good boxer. I think this fight will be very competitive. And both competitors are equally good to me. My prediction is either an early knockout win for Gassiev or Usyk wins by going the distance. Of all of in this Ring magazine article, and it's Ring magazine, so you can take it or leave it. I don't really go too much into what like promoters might pick. Well, I think promoters have a better idea than maybe some media people do, because I just have a feeling a lot of these media guys don't really pay attention to boxing that much. But I happen to, in this particular instance, go with who is favored. And the tally, according to this one, is 14-6 and 2 undecided in favor of Oleksandr Usyk. Right, so you have, that's kind of where I am on it. Like, my thought on it is that Usyk is, the thing that I like about Oleksandr Usyk is Oleksandr Usyk has a very high work rate. A lot of ways he's very similar to Lomachenko in that regard, in that when you're not punching, he punches, and he's constantly staying busy. He's punching when the other guy's punching. Now there's a chance though that he might get caught by Murat Gassiev while he's doing that. So, I kind of tend to go with what, what Marco Hutt said. Huck says that, if it's going to be a knockout, I would give the advantage in the knockout to Gassiev. If it's going to go the decision, if it's going to go the distance, I give the advantage to Usyk. I don't see Usyk knocking out Gassiev. And quite honestly, I do see Gassiev getting into a situation where he needs a knockout to win. Now, a lot of people really had Dorticos behind in the fight with Gassiev. I didn't. I kind of thought that in the first half of the fight that Dorticos was really taking the fight to Gassiev. And as a result, I was giving him rounds. And I said it during the video that I made after that one. I was really glad that fight ended up, not necessarily glad that Dorticos got knocked out, but it was really good for there to have been a decisive ending to that fight, because if it had gone to the scorecards, I do believe that the scorecards were in favor of Gassiev when they were after they let people know what the score of the fight was heading into the knockout. But for me, that would have been tough, because I thought that Dorticos was doing good work with Gassiev. I just think that Gassiev is going to have a problem with the work rate of Usyk. Now, Usyk is a southpaw, a tall southpaw. But I can't remember, and remember, this is me just as a fan looking at it. I can't say that, I'm, expert in this, but just having watched the fights that I watched Gassiev, he seemed like he's at a disadvantage for hand speed with Oleksandr Usyk. He has an advantage. He has a good advantage in power, but I just could see him just being in a situation where he's losing round after round, because because he's not going to be able to continually score points with Oleksandr Usyk, who, in my opinion, similar to Lomachenko, fight in what I would consider to be an amateur style, where you have the white tips to the gloves, and you're counting who lands the most punches on the white tips of the glove, not necessarily caring about whose shots are harder, but more of a volume game. So, just with that mentality of constantly trying to score points, I just think it's going to be tough to do that. I've not seen Oleksandr Usyk hurt either. And he's been in there with some pretty big guys. I remember that he, in the world, the World Series of Boxing, that quasi amateur professional tournament that people participate in right before they go in full-time pros, and try so that they can keep their amateur pedigree. I think that's the World Series of Boxing. I remember Oleksandr Usyk faced Joe Joyce, and I think he beat Joe Joyce pretty easily. And Joe Joyce, is a big dude, was got, nice punching power on him. But Gassiev just made it so, the punching power didn't really matter, because he never really could get anything going with him. So I just think the speed of his hands, the speed of his footwork, his work rate is going to cause Gassiev, I just think it's going to be tough on Gassiev winning this fight. And lastly, similar to I can't remember the name of the guy that Oleksandr Usyk beat in the last fight, but in the World Boxing Super Series, but Marius Briedis. Briedis, I think, had some good rounds in the beginning, and he had some good rounds towards the end. But it was just that there was those middle rounds where Briedis had to take a breath. He just had to take a breath. He had to take some rounds just to save his energy, because he just didn't have the incredible amount of energy that Oleksandr Usyk has. Now, if this goes to this decision, there is, of course, the risk that Oleksandr Usyk runs, because he's going to Russia. Now, I don't want to cast aspersions on Russian judges. I haven't witnessed a tremendous amount of fights that are taking place in Russia, but I've definitely watched other people get what I consider to be hometown decisions through my entire tenure of being a boxing fan, where you going on the road and you're fighting somebody in their hometown, and crazy things can happen. You see fights where people believe that it was a lopsided win for one person, but they're on somebody else's home turf, and the judges don't see it that way. So I could definitely see if Murat Gassiev is able to fight a minute of the 30 seconds of the first round of the beginning of the round, land some good shots, pressure him, and then in the last 45 seconds of the round, really put some pressure on him where he might be able to sway some judges because he's the hometown guy. So, and I wouldn't doubt that Abel Sanchez would know this and be able to instruct him in that way. But then again, man, he might just walk out there and get a knockout. Anyway, I'm really looking forward to the fight. This is something I've been waiting for a while. It's much to see Usyk and Gassiev in their last bit of time that they're going to be a cruiserweight. And to see somebody unify the belts, I think that's an awesome thing. I know that this Denis Lebedev has some elevated version of the championship belt for the WBA, but I'm pretty sure that everybody would consider this a unification of the cruiserweight division. Now, of course, the cruiserweight division is the redheaded stepchild to the light heavyweights and the heavyweights, and whoever wins this, or both of these guys, are more than likely going to wind up at heavyweight. Usyk, I think his arrival in the heavyweight division is a little more anticipated than Gassiev's is, but I look forward to seeing both these guys. I mean, I was watching a video by Richard Dwyer, a channel that I've been subscribed to for years. I respect his opinion, on his take on Usyk and how Usyk, would be trouble for Anthony Joshua. He believes it'd be trouble for Deontay Wilder as well. I don't necessarily see that with Deontay Wilder because, man, that's a lot, because it ain't about boxing with him, and that length advantage that he has over Usyk. That jab can get there, but that right hand is a straight right hand is a killer to a southpaw. And I think that unlike Luis Ortiz, who fights at a slower pace and a more cautious pace, that if Oleksandr Usyk really tries to keep up that very, very big work rate with Deontay Wilder, man, one of them bombs is going to land flush. And if one of those bombs land flush, when one of those bombs land flush, it's going to be nice. It's going to be lights out. But anyway, it is what it is, and we're not too far off of the fight. Again, my prediction is Oleksandr Usyk by unanimous decision. But we'll see what happens, man. I'll check you out after the fight. Peace.